This week, a very special episode anime for beginners. This is Triple XP.
Brr, 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 brr.
Triple XP.
Welcome to the latest episode of Triple XP. I'm Shane. This is Mike and Cheese.
Hello.
Hi.
And this week we're taking a break from our usual content to give you a bit of a beginner's guide into anime. So we should probably start off by introducing where we are in our own anime careers, worlds, where we sit in the anime that we, where we are. How beginner are you?
How many
What's our current power levels?
How many anime action figures do you own?
Exactly. So I think Cheese, Mike, you might be the most beginner out of the three of us. So do you want to start off?
I guess so. Where do I start? Pokemon. Like, I watched that as a kid. I kind of started there, but
I didn't even think of that. Okay.
yeah. But like, I think the one for me was actually Yu-Gi-Oh more over Pokemon because it's just so much more anime than Pokemon is.
That's true.
Like, Pokemon seems a bit sort of
Americanized.
Americanized. Yeah, kind of.
It's not just that. It's by comparison to Yu-Gi-Oh, it's substantially more childish.
Yeah, basic.
Like there's a clear scale. Like Pokemon is at the bottom, and that's for your really young children, like up to maybe like 12, 13. Then you've got Digimon, which is for your young teens.
That's
which
where
gets a little bit darker.
Yeah.
And then you've got Yu-Gi-Oh, where it captures somebody's soul and sends them to the Shadow Realm in the second episode. It just gets real fucking dark real quickly. But yeah, I'm glad you like that because I'm a big fan of Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, it's
my wife still has her cards.
Getting the cards and like collecting the cards and stuff. It was just all seeped in that sort of like it's a weird sort of thing at anime because there's a lot of like cartoons that I used to watch, about like superheroes and things like that, and they don't quite hit the same vein as anime. Like anime is very different to like your standard cartoon, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's important to consider that most people would separate what is the long-running sort of Saturday morning cartoon style anime, so your Pokemons and Yu-Gi-Ohs and even to an extent your Dragon Balls, is very different to most of the anime I think we're going to be talking about today, which is more your sort of adult scale anime, where you're generally not going to find them being played on your Saturday morning kids show because of the nature of what they are. They're very much seen on two very different levels, aren't they?
Yeah, they're a bit more adult. Like, but it's probably the stuff that we're all talking about today is a bit more explores like more adult themes and things like that. Yeah. But, what about you, Cheese? Where's your anime career at?
So now that you mentioned it, I mean, Pokemon and Digimon were like my first obsessions. Like, absolutely loved Pokemon, and then everybody loved Pokemon, and then Digimon came out. I'm like, ooh, this is neat. A little different, but you're right. It's definitely not like the cutesy style of like, oh, here's a Jigglypuff and a Pikachu. It's like, here's this weird Arumon or whatever his name. Like, it was definitely a more like the next step for most people. And then we used to watch Dragon Ball Z and different Gundam, whatever was on back in 1996, 98, when it would be on like Cartoon Network late at night. And we were just like, oh, it's a cartoon. And then we're like, are those boobs? Did they just say a bad word? Are they fighting to the death? And so looking back, it's like, actually, I was kind of introduced to that stuff a long time ago and didn't really realize it. And then I think just up until the last couple of years, with like Attack on Titan, I watched in like 2015 maybe, but then I kind of took like a long break until more recently. I'm like, all right, it's time to dive into this, and now I can't stop. So it's one of those things that was kind of ingrained in my brain 20 years ago, 25 years ago, starting with Pokemon, and now it's just like, I need this in my veins right now, like as much as possible. I love it. And now
Yeah,
it's
I think me and you are in the same sort of vein where, like, you know, a couple of years ago we kind of watched a few animes and then drifted off, and now we've really like hit our stride with it and become like just wanting to watch everything and everything, like anything and everything.
Yeah, and part of this episode, when we started talking about this, I kind of brought up how one of my brothers was like, "Oh, you should watch this new show on Netflix." I'm like, "I can't. I'm watching anime." And he goes, "Why?" And I'm like, "It's so great." And he goes, "I don't understand. I know so many people who I would never expect to watch anime that are obsessed with it, and I'd be interested to know why people like that." And so this is when I told you guys that story, and we started this. So hopefully by the end of this episode, if you've ever been like, "I don't want to watch cartoons," maybe you'll reconsider it a little bit, because we're not talking about Family Guy adult cartoons or South Park. We're talking about like structured series with character development and not just political one-liners. This is like, there's depth.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think that's the world of difference when you say like adult cartoons. It's the depth that you get in like the stories and the world building and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. Yeah.
What about you, Shane? We know you're a nerd, but tell everybody else.
So out of the three of us, I suppose
This is where he does the anime.
yeah,
glasses
the image
thing.
that we've got for me kind of covers it in that I'm by no means an anime expert, but out of the three of us, I'm the most experienced in anime. Again, like you guys, I started off with your Pokemons and Digimon, and I absolutely loved Yu-Gi-Oh! But I think as a kid and as a teen, I never associated those with anime because they were just Saturday morning cartoons. I didn't think of it in that way. The first animes I was truly introduced to was around 13 years old, and the Sci-Fi Channel had two animes on 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning every week. I just stumbled upon them purely by accident, and those two series were Martian Successor Nadesigo, which is a series about a ship, which is mostly women and one man, who they have mechas and they are flying around the galaxy fighting monsters and trying to save humanity. Very fun, very. It's got a lot of fan service in it, which is, for those that don't know, which is like over sexualized scenes for no real reason, like booby shots and bum shots, not actual sex, but just over sexualized scenes.
Your favorite.
Oh yeah, but on the whole, it was just a very fun sort of mecha anime. And then following that, at 7:30, they then had Neon Genesis Evangelion. So if either of you have heard of that or seen that before, it is a real mind fuck of an anime. It's really deep, really dark. How on earth they played this at 7:30 in the morning and got away with it, I will never know, because it is so messed up. And I would honestly say to somebody starting out with anime, don't start out the way I did, because you're going very deep very quickly, and it kind of spirals from there. But ever since then, so for the last 10, 15 years, I've been consistently, well, it's about 18 years actually, I've been pretty much consistently watching anime in and out, subscribed to Funimation, Crunchyroll, all the necessary outputs in the UK, and have been for several years now. So I've seen quite a few. I've got a fairly good idea, but as I say, I'm by no means an expert.
So, should we talk about a starting point? Like as a brand new person, never seen an anime before, where is the starting point? Which is the one
I
that you
think
start at?
I think I can start with this, since I'm maybe, well, Mike, you probably have good insight too, but I started with Attack on Titan in like 2015, and I want to point out that in the past, anime was for the nerdy kids or the weird kids who were obsessed with like Japanese everything, and they would draw these little chibi characters and all this stuff. And I had a cousin like that. And so in like 2015, I texted her and I'm like, all right, I want to get into this stuff. Tell me a good starting point. And everybody at that point was watching Attack on Titan. So I watched the first season. I don't know if the second one was out by then or not, but I watched it subbed, and I loved it. It was weird. It was kind of creepy. It was gruesome and brutal, and I loved every second of it. And for whatever reason, I just stopped. I mean, that was kind of a point in my life. I just finished college and started a real adult job, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to invest like I do now, because I don't have a life. But more recently, when I talked to people about where should I start, Demon Slayer was a very, very popular one. And it's tough because there's so many great animes out there now, but even like One Piece just hit 1,000 episodes. That's like 16 days worth of episodes. Nobody has time to watch that now. So if you really want to get invested, it's best to start with something where there's like a season of it. So there's 20, or is there 12 episodes of Demon Slayer, 22 or 24? I don't remember. But
I think it's around 24,
26,
25.
something like that.
It's a 20-odd season, yeah.
So it's
it's a dual core.
So it's a pretty quick watch. You could watch it in a week or a weekend or whatever, depending on how committed you are. So I started with Demon Slayer, which is honestly kind of a weird place to start because it's a lot. It's not a happy-go-lucky anime by any means.
See, I don't think it is a weird place to start for you, Cheese. And I say that because I do have a handful of tips that I always give to people that want to get into anime. And one of those tips is exactly what you just said. Don't start with something that's super long.
Yeah.
Like, don't go into a 90 episode anime straight away because you will lose steam momentum. Pick something like you say that's 12 or 24 episodes that you can see it through to the end.
Yep.
Yeah, don't start with One Piece.
Yeah.
No, don't start with One Piece. Don't start with Dragon Ball. Don't start with Bleach.
Even My Hero Academia is 130 episodes now.
Exactly. Like you want to build into those lengths of series. Yes. Secondly, the layout of genres, with the exception of two, straight off the top of my head, are generally very similar to any other media. So the reason I say Demon Slayer isn't that weird for you, Cheese, is as discussed last week, you really like horror.
Right.
And Demon Slayer is a very horror-esque anime, although it's got a lot of action in it, is an action horror, essentially. Yeah. So actually, it's the perfect place for you to start. And so I would say to anyone, if you're into like high school drama, watch A Slice of Life as your first one. If you're into superhero action, watch an action-based anime. If you really fucking love robots like I do, watch a mecha. And focus on those ones. And for those that don't know, mechas being ones, an anime involves a giant robot that people fight, a bit like Power Rangers. But yeah, try and pick a genre that is similar to the genres that you would watch outside of anime, because that's how you're going to find something that connects with you quicker.
Yeah.
Then if you just go in and go, oh, that looks cool, but it's a completely separate genre to what you're used to watching, you're going to disconnect with it really quickly.
Right.
So actually, I don't think it is that weird.
It wasn't weird for me, but like my twin brother even was like, what should I watch? I'm like, Demon Slayer. And I knew he was going to hate it because that's not really, he doesn't watch horror. So for him, I recommended My Hero Academia. But again, that's a ton of episodes, but it's a very different style than My Hero Academia or than Demon Slayer. So my best advice is talk to people who know anime, because like you're a great example, Shane, because you've seen so much. And like my tattoo artist has watched a ton of anime too. So she can kind of say, well, do you want something scary? Do you want something kind of easier to watch? There's a lot of different stuff. I think you recommended Goblin Slayer to me. So I'm trying to watch as much different anime as possible to see what it is I really like, because there's so much out there. You're never going to be able to watch it all. So if I don't like the style of what would be One Piece, I'm not going to watch 1,000 episodes of One Piece ever. So the best way to start... Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and that's another thing. You just said that you just mentioned the word style. I would always implore people to watch an anime that they enjoy the art style.
Yeah.
If someone comes along to you and says, I think you're going to love this anime because the story is great, if you don't like the art style, you will not get on with it.
Yeah.
So make sure you're looking at the art style and going, you know what, that is a bit of me, because otherwise you're just going to struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super important, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I started watching more and more anime. In college, I did a little spell of animation, failed at it miserably because it's so hard, and just appreciating like the amount of effort that goes into those animations,
especially back in
the 90s. I now look for really, really well animated. I know most of them are, to be fair.
Yeah,
but just like you said, like a specific style that fits for you. One of them being, and this is my kind of starting point really, is on Netflix. There's two actually. One is Love, Death and Robots, which I know it technically isn't all anime, but it's kind of a taste of a lot of different animation styles.
Yeah.
And watching that and you're seeing there's like 3D techniques, there's 2D drawn, there's there's all sorts of different styles there, and it's kind of a nice mix to sort of get like a grasp on what you enjoy watching. You know, with Love, Death and Robots, it's short story after short story. If none of you've ever heard me prattle on about it endlessly in this podcast,
I finally watched
It's like-
we've watched a couple episodes finally, and we're like, we should have watched this forever ago. It's so good.
yeah,
good.
the way I sell it to people is an animated Black Mirror.
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
that's the best way to sell it.
Yep.
But after watching that, I kind of being like from a massive gaming background, I leaned into Castlevania more, and that has a really specific style that really gels with me. And it did take me a few goes to like get into it, but once it got to like the actual huge fight scenes and stuff like it's incredibly well animated, incredibly well. And I think like that for me is like how I started, and I think it was a good starting point. Just sort of finding the animation that you love and kind of exploring more of it and trying to find more of it. And,
Another
but yeah, I also started with Netflix because it was free. I was already paying for it, so
That is handy.
another great styled one that's on Netflix now. So I've already watched, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 different animes, but this is maybe my favorite one already, and I'm only 6 episodes in. Maybe my favorite of all time, Cowboy Bebop, is awesome. I love the story. The style is absolutely amazing. The super gritty, hand-drawn 1998, I think it came out in, but like to this day, it's just so well done. And with the live action series coming out in a couple of weeks, I think a lot of people will watch this because it literally just got put on Netflix 2 or 3 days ago, and it's so perfect. It's the perfect aesthetic, and it's just I need so much more of that right now. And there's not very much. Like, it's a short series. It's 1 season of 24 episodes, I think. But
nice.
it is
It's
so
one
good.
season and a film.
Yeah.
The way that was explained to me was it was kind of like a Guardians of the Galaxy type band of ragtag people, and
Yeah, it's not
Kind
super
of.
serious. It's kind of like these
cruising around in space.
Yeah, it's not like super slapstick humor or anything though, which is good because that gets kind of old pretty quick. But it's just this kind of gritty, not super serious space bounty hunter show that has like this silky, jazzy, smoky.
Yeah, so
Feel to it.
the big selling point for Cowboy Bebop is the music.
Yes.
It's an anime, like you say, it's a quite a gritty sort of like bounty hunter story, but the use of music in that show is fantastic. And
Yeah.
musically, I think it's one of the best shows that's ever existed when it comes to a musical standpoint. And every time they have a space battle or something happens on the ground, like and they're running around, there's just this fantastic like jazz score in the background that's like playing through, and it's just so well done.
It is. It's fantastic. It's just, you feel like you're in like a smoky bar in the 90s, like watching some jazz performer on stage with like a velvet blue curtain behind. Like, it's exactly what I wanted it to be. And I can't wait to finish watching this series. It's amazing.
With it being so short, I think it's next on my list.
Yeah, move it up. I think you would enjoy it.
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it. And actually, I think from knowing you, Mike, I think there's like any anime that like really heavily plays into music, I think you would probably get on with quite well.
Yeah.
Because I know you're quite big on music anyway.
And you're like a listener versus a watcher. Like you say, you like to have it on in the background, so that might sell it to you a little bit better too.
That is usually how I watch. I'll kind of just have it on in the background and be like listening in, and when things get going, I kind of it gets my full attention then.
Yeah.
With that in mind, then, while we're on the note of music entwined animes, I have 2 recommendations off the back of Cowboy Bebop. The first one is an anime called Samurai Champloo. Don't know if either of you've heard of that before.
I've been watching a bit of that off the back of your recommendation, actually.
It's so cheese. If I've not mentioned this one to you before, have I?
What's it called? Samurai what?
Samurai Champloo.
Champloo?
Yeah, or Champloo, depending on how you want to say it. So essentially, it's a samurai anime. It's set during whatever period in Japan involves samurais, but it's really, really cleverly mixed with like late 90s, mid 90s hip hop. And there's points where it like almost crosses over, and all of the fighting style is in time to hip hop beats. It's really
Nice.
clever how it's done. It's got a great story, and the characters are great as well. And it's just got some really solid action. And the other one I would recommend, and this is probably more for you, Mike, is a bit of a tearjerker though, not very actiony. Is called Your Lie in April. It's a single series. It's on Netflix. It's essentially, without giving away any spoilers, this is obviously the just the blurb on Netflix. It's about a young boy who is a sort of like prodigal pianist. He's this fantastic pianist at a very young age, except he's lost his mojo, and he meets a young violinist, and it kind of goes from there. But the story is fantastic. All of the score is like proper classical music,
Nice.
but it is fantastically done, and it 100% made me cry. So yeah, I think that's get it on there because it's a solid show.
Should we maybe back up a little bit and discuss why anime is appealing? Like, just start with that before we get into all these recommendations, because we could do that forever.
Yeah, just off the back of that one. That's why I wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, again, as the more beginners, you two hit me with why it is appealing.
Okay, I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier about it just being well animated. I kind of have it on in the background. That's kind of how I watch anime. So I'm just looking for pretty images to like have on in the background, and then also if there's an amazing soundtrack, a great story that comes with it, then if it grabbed my attention, then that's when I'm fully invested in it. But yeah, it's kind of a tough question, really, because there's a lot of media out there to get your attention, and picking anime over all of that is kind of like why would you be doing that, like, when there's so much other stuff as well? But yeah, for me it's a tough one. It's kind of like I have it on in the background, and that's how I watch it. So I'm not fully invested in it, and it's not taking all of my attention because I've got so much other stuff to do. Like I do a lot of gaming, obviously.
Yeah. See, and I think from my perspective, I need to be fully invested in it, because my ADD, if I don't have subtitles on, or for some reason it seems like anime titles are really quiet, like you have to crank your volume up really high, at least on my TV, and I noticed on my computer. I don't know if that's a sound mixing issue or if that's just a common thing, but I think I was just looking for something different to watch. Like, I've watched Breaking Bad and Dexter and Game of Thrones and all of these shows, and at the end of the day, it's like, meh, why? Like, we're all creative people, and we appreciate like the animation styles that these shows do, and they can do so much more than CGI can't. Well, certain aspects, like we talked, how Demon Slayer would not be as good of a live action show as it is an anime, because they can do these beautiful drawings of these different breathing forms and like all this stuff that's kind of fantastical and sometimes in their head or whatever it may be, that CGI would just butcher. I think like I never saw the Avatar live action movie, the Last Airbender or whatever movie, but I'm sure that was a huge reason that it was terrible.
Yeah, let's not go there.
So I think for me, I just needed to see something new, and even though Cowboy Bebop's 25 years old, to me it's new, and that style is new, and the more you watch it, the more you start to see why it's so popular. And there's nothing wrong with watching the popular animes, because it's still different. Like, people watch Game of Thrones for a reason. People watch all these shows for a reason. But there's so much to ingest in media nowadays that you can really only pick and choose so much. And you really have to pick something that really speaks to you and really grabs your attention. And after I watched Demon Slayer, I'm like, all right, let's go a totally different direction and watch something else. And I chose My Hero Academia. And that one's great because it's a longer standing show. It's been on for, I want to say, like 8 years or something. And you start to see how different it is, like just in a day-to-day life of these characters, especially as they're Japanese characters or whatever it may be. And comparing it to life in the UK and life in America, like, you start to see all these different things. And then you get really invested because you're like, wow, they're not saying, we talked specifically about My Hero Academia, where they're not like, I'm going to kill you and I'm the best. It's like, I will do my best and I will try to go beyond 100% of what I give to like what I'm trying to do with my life. Like, it's just, you get kind of caught up in that and you're like, this is fantastic. Like, why do we have
power of friendship?
Yeah, you're like, why do we have to be this way? Like, they get it right. So let me back up a little bit. I think for me, I love anime because the storytelling and the character development are perfected. There is something about one of the first episode of My Hero Academia. You see this little character. I think he's supposed to be like 5 or 6 years old, and he's crying watching this superhero. He's so obsessed. He loves this guy. He wants to be that when he grows up. And then they're like, sorry, kid, you can't do that. And then the kid breaks down and cries, and it's the most heart-wrenching thing. But it's animated, and you're like, why do I care about this cartoon character? But once you watch the whole series, and then you start it again, like I have now twice, it's just like, they just get it. It's not like animation. It's not like cartoons that we have here and grew up with, like Hey Arnold and the Rugrats. And I guess I don't know if you guys had those shows. I assume you had access to a lot of that stuff. But it's not the same at all. Like, that was just like entertainment and supposed to be kind of funny and like, oh, these babies can talk. But this is not that way at all. It's like struggles of real life in circumstances where they have superpowers or something. Like, it's not so made up. It's like they tie real world in with the fantastical, and that's what makes it awesome. It still feels real, even though it's so made up, if that makes sense. You feel connected to these characters, even though you don't have superpowers.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, literally everything that both of you have just said is what makes anime great. Like, the mixture of fantastic art styles, and there is so many different art styles and so many different studios doing different things. One of my favorite studios, for example, is Trigger, and they have a very specific style to the way they do like combat and the way that they draw their characters. It's very colorful. It's very like in your face, but still very like dark and down to earth. But then at the same time, like you say, Cheese, like you look at anime can do things that like with storylines and characters that for me, no other medium can.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones is a perfect example that you've raised. How often does a fantasy series comes along that really, really, really puts you in the place of that fantasy world and makes you feel like you're in that universe? Game of Thrones is a great example of that, but how often does a show like that come along?
It's pretty few. I mean, I can think
very
like
few and far between.
Like Star Wars, which they're not shows, but like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones. Those are the biggest ones to me.
Because you've got to look at things like budget and then the actors, and whereas actually with anime, you can create this super fantastical world that's actually really like looks beautiful and easy to fall in love with on a shoestring budget in comparison to the budget that Game of Thrones is made from.
Yeah.
You can create these characters that you can just absolutely fall in love with super quickly, and storylines that make them really down to earth, while at the same time having crazy superpowers or having crazy shit going on that you just think, how does this make sense?
Yeah.
Why am I crying over the fact that this guy's just been punched and he's now about to fly into the sky or some shit? Like, it can do things that I don't think any other medium can. And then even when you then combine those two things, and like we say with Demon Slayer, and there's a lot of anime, and My Hero is the same exact same thing. I don't think My Hero would ever work in a live action format. It just wouldn't have the same impact.
It'd be weird.
Than it had.
A lot of green screen CGI bullshit that would ruin it for a lot of people really fast.
You lose a lot of the character of like, because it's just a person like me or you or whatever. Like the way they're drawn and everything, they're like so fantastical. They're like nothing that you know a human could replicate. Like the size of you know, like Deku, he's got this green crazy hair and stuff like that, and then
he's like he's meant to be like tiny in comparison to all of his classmates. And like you compare him against All Might, and he's like the size of a single fire.
There's a few
one fire.
There's a few things to elaborate on there. Number one is the way that anime does facial expressions. And like sometimes like in Demon Slayer and My Hero, they'll do a totally different animation style when they're like frustrated or disgruntled or flustered or something, where their face will go white, and they just do something totally different that emphasizes that emotion far better than an actor could. Another thing is when they do more of the characters not talking, but you're hearing their thoughts. That does not translate in live action at all, but in anime, it's everywhere, and you just get used to it. So
Yeah.
that develops those characters
like,
so much
just
more.
Touching on that, Cheese. Some of the storylines would just never translate. Again, we're just talking about Demon Slayer. The first 5 minutes, an entire family gets murdered. How many live action shows are you going to see, or even going to get past the pilot stage, where an entire family, including children, get absolutely murdered in a horrific, gory fashion within the first 5 minutes?
There's something about there's something about it being animated where it's a little more digestible. It's a little more like, oh, well,
yeah,
I could watch this show. Another thing that I want to touch on too is, of all the anime that I've watched, there's not a single character that I hated. My Hero Academia has dozens of characters. Like there's 20 kids in the class. So right from the get-go, there's kids that aren't your favorites, but like it's not like, oh my God, I hate them. Why are they on the show? Everything is so well thought out. And at some point or another, each character gets their episode or their arc or whatever it is where you get to know them. You get to hear like their thoughts a little bit more played out. And there's really never a time you don't like them. Even in Demon Slayer, which we're going to talk a lot about, I feel like, Zenitsu or whatever his name is, he is so annoying, but then he has these redeeming qualities that they kind of touch on. So they are, the anime studios are masters of character development and keeping everybody kind of like on the same playing field. Like, yeah, Tanjiro might be the favorite or Nezuko, but like these other characters are amazing at certain times.
Yeah. Like I feel like they all get their well-roundedness like eventually. You know,
they all get their moments. Yeah.
Kind of just going off the back of that, because we're all pretty excited here just talking about anime and like all the shit that we love. Like, can we can we talk about some like negatives, some negative points? I hate to bring it up, but there are some things that like irk me when I'm watching anime, when I have it on. One of them being because usually short episodes, about 20 minutes.
Yeah,
you get 5 minutes of like a super long intro and then a super long outro, and it's like you just get so sick of that music.
Yeah,
that's one for me that stands out, and it's kind of like the standard for like a good anime for me is whether my girlfriend would watch, like whether Ellie would watch it, and you know, she sat and watched some with me and what have you, and it's always like that point where it's like, oh, this fucking music again, like I'm so sick of it. And I'm not saying it's like bad music or anything, because it is usually pretty good.
I mean,
once
sometimes
you hear it, like,
yeah,
oh yeah,
sometimes.
But once you hear it like over and over and over and over and over again, one of them for me was Attack on Titan. It just had like great music, but I was just so sick of it, like because I've binge watched it, and it's like every 20 minutes you hear the same song, and it's like, fuck, I'm so sick of this.
My favorite is when it's not in English and you still know the words.
So one of the good, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I do see what you're saying around the negative of that. One of the good things that particularly some of the more developed animes do, which I think is quite good. So generally anime is, the layout is different to American or British shows in that, as you said, Cheese, sometimes it's a 12-episode series or sometimes it's a 24. Now, generally what it is that a series is split into two cores, so two halves, or 4 cores, depending on how long the series is going to be. Generally, it's 12 episodes to a core. Now, the reason they tend to do that is they'll do like the first core be like spring, and then they'll have like a summer break, and then there'll be the second core. So I know some shows do that. I know Riverdale, for example, for America, they did a similar style thing where it split the seasons in half. And I think America have taken it on in some areas.
It's a lot more popular now because of Netflix shows and Hulu and all that stuff that we have here. Yeah, it's definitely, they split it up.
Half a series to have a small break and then another half.
Keeps the interest.
Yeah, definitely. And what anime does tend to do is that when there is that core switch, and it's often 2 story arcs, which then have an overarching story over the top of that as well. So it's not just one really long story. It's 12 episodes of arc, 12 episodes of arc, and a massive overarch. what you do tend to find is the music changes after each core. The thing that frustrates me the most is generally the first 2 or 3 cores will always have the best music, and then it gets substantially worse as the season goes on.
Yeah, I've
My
noticed that as
Hero
well,
is
yeah.
a prime example of that.
Yeah.
Attack on Titan is a prime example of that. The music is so much worse in the more recent seasons than in the starting seasons.
Yeah.
My Hero's
the first season of Attack on Titan is an absolute banger. And then when you get to the later seasons, it's like, this is dreadful. I'm so sick of this.
And it's exactly the same. Like, I will literally go away and listen to the My Hero opening for the first couple of seasons.
Oh, yeah.
I won't
skip
actively avoid
Yeah.
the latest one because I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? I don't want to hear this.
I'd be curious to know what the impact is, like why music and anime are so closely connected. Like if it's more in Japan, because like most of those have Japanese songs as their intro. Like what that relationship's like and why. Like I don't know if those are like nerdy bands or if it's like selected for a reason, or if they're not written for the show. I assume they're just songs from albums that have been picked to be the main
so
song.
A lot of the time they are written for the show.
Oh really?
A lot of particularly in the later seasons, so a lot of them are written for the show specifically. I know My Hero being Fun One, that was specifically for the show.
Okay.
But also the way the music industry works over there is very different to how it works in other countries.
Okay.
There's a lot of like sponsorship from outside the music industry into the music industry, including like shops sponsoring bands and stuff. Like it's very confusing and it's very different over there as to how it works. But generally, the music industry likes to be involved. All the industry try to get involved with each other essentially, and everyone tries to kind of support each other depending on what, irrelevant of what industry you're in. So you tend to find the music industry supports the TV industry a lot in that country, as opposed to being like a completely separate
interesting
entity.
I guess that makes sense because, like you said, My Hero specifically, intro and the credit scene, the credit song at the end, they switch them up like sometimes 2 or 3 times a season. I noticed, especially not after the first 2 they do, and most of them are bangers, like they're awesome. But you're right, the newer ones not so great, and it sucks. I will say something about how you should watch anime. I don't want to like change the subject, but there's nothing worse than A, not being able to skip the intro, and B, well actually there's 3. B, being able to skip the credits at the end to go to the next episode, and the C3, whatever, I don't know if I was numbers or letters, but the third thing is do not watch something like My Hero Academia on Hulu. You don't have Hulu there, I don't think, but here you can watch it with ads for free, or not for free, with your subscription. It's a cheaper subscription, but then you have ads every like 7 or 8 minutes, and it ruins the flow of the show. And people love anime because it is so bite-sized. You can watch an episode in 20 minutes and you're on your way, but the commercials ruin it. Pay extra to have
get you to pay for it, isn't it?
Yeah, which is totally worth it.
Again, that's why Netflix is a decent starting point. Like you get a good selection on there. There's no ads in between and stuff like that, and there's no extra subscription for it or anything like that.
And a lot of the stuff that's on Hulu is like newer animes that you can get on Crunchyroll and Funimation, but the way they have to do it is with the ads. So if you're really needing to see the new episode of My Hero, then you watch it subbed on Hulu with ads. But man, it's not the right way to watch it.
So Crunchyroll does the same thing. If you're not a paid member, then you have to watch it with ads. If you're a paid member, you can skip the ads, or well, it just doesn't play them.
It's rough.
I do have another negative to add, though. I know Mike just mentioned about there being a few negatives, and one of the big negatives for me is, and there's particular shows that do it more so than others, is large amounts of unnecessary filler episodes, and it's where there's
a big one.
Clear the writers have hit a bit of a wall and are trying to work through it, but they have to obviously still meet a deadline of getting episodes out, and so it ends up becoming the most notorious one is Dragon Ball. I think it was and this is just from memory, I think it was the Freezer fight ended up being something like a stupid like 10 episodes long or something, because they hadn't finished writing the series, so they ended up having to drag out this fight. But there's a lot of series that do that. They throw in, I'm all for one filler episode in the middle. I can deal with that. Like one little fun filler episode,
The
a
Hero's
little
Notebook, yeah, like those episodes.
yeah, a little sidetrack from the
Yeah.
core
Yeah.
story just to give you a bit of a breather. But when there's 3, 4, 5 filler episodes because they don't really know where they're going with it, you just think, oh, I'm just, is it worth my time now?
Even yesterday, I was streaming a game and somebody came in and was talking about One Piece, and I'm like, I did not know that there was 1,000 episodes until it was trending on Twitter the other day for their anniversary or whatever, or hitting that milestone, and the person said that their icon was literally the One Piece logo. They're like, yeah, I love it, but it's a lot of fluff. It's a lot of filler for 1,000 episodes for a show that's been on since like 1996.
How do you have 1,000 episodes without there being a like loads of filler? It's not possible. You can't possibly have 1,000 episodes of pure story-driven episodes. It's just it'd be impossible, surely.
Yeah, and
I mean, there's another one that does this a lot, and I've tried to watch it a few times. Is Naruto. Like, I don't know. It's just because it's sort of come from the sort of the comic, the mangas. But like, it feels like some of the episodes are just like one still image. Like, you know, like there's a fight that's going on for like, you know, a whole episode, and it just feels like one still image, and they just move to another image and then back. And there's like dialogue and stuff like that, but those ones get a huge disconnect for me because it's just the animation isn't there.
And it tends to be fair, it does tend to be those action, more so than the male character dominated shows, action shows, Dragon Balls, Naruto's. I know Bleach used to be quite bad for it. One Piece, they're all very similar in that they're heavy action fighting shows that then just fluff out their fights with a lot of filler.
I feel like My Hero Academia. Sorry, that's my favorite. I'm looking at my
we can't tell.
My 6 figures back there, my fingers back there. But like, that show does not have a ton of fluff. There's a couple of episodes where like could have lived without that, but most of those fluff episodes I'd consider the look into other, like the individual characters' lives, like the not so main characters, the B and C characters. And sometimes if you're invested enough in the show, like where you just need more of it, you will watch the Hero Notebook episodes, and yeah, they're not amazing, but it adds a little bit of charm to some of those characters that you get to see less of. So sometimes it's okay. But if it's 1,000 episodes and 50% of them are fluff, no thank you.
It's also very show dependent, isn't it? Like, for example, if you've got let's say a heavy zombie anime that's like gore and lots of fighting and lots of like hard hitting emotional stuff, and then it takes a small break from that to give you a bit of a breather to kind of do a slightly less emotional, like a little bit more of a fun episode, you can kind of go, you know what, I needed this breather.
Yeah.
Whereas it's something that's like really story driven and actually it doesn't need that break, then that's when it feels like, oh, why did you put this in there? This disconnects the story from me now because it's unnecessary.
Yeah, it's kind of all about balance, I think, for most of those shows. I just finished Jujutsu Kaisen like recently, and I don't know if either of you have watched that yet. I know Jedi has.
A few episodes of it.
I loved it. I thought it was great. It reminded me a lot of Demon Slayer with a lot more comedy built into it. So it was a little more digestible. I keep saying digestible, and I hate myself for it. But it's one of those shows where it is a good balance of like really gruesome, heavy, light and dark fighting stuff, and then like, oh my god, that was actually really fun. Like laughing out loud funny. It was that kind of anime. So that balanced out really well. And sometimes it doesn't always work that way. I don't remember what my point was.
As I say, this is why I always advise to go for the shorter animes that are a complete series, start to finish, has a beginning, has a middle, has an end. Not the Dragon Balls that have been going since 1992 or whatever year it started and still doesn't have an end in sight. It's always good to go for those ones where there's going to be a clear finish at the end, because I think for me, and I imagine Mike, you're very similar to this because you give up on things quite easily. If you know that there is an end in sight, you're probably more willing to watch through it, aren't you? Whereas if you think, oh well, this is just going to go on forever, you're like, oh, I can't be arsed with this. So I'm just going to move on to something that's worth my time.
Yeah, honestly, the second thing I look at when I see an anime, I see the cover art, and then I look at like the episode amount of episodes there are, and then like if it's more than 100, I'm like, nah, I'm done.
That's high.
Yeah,
that's so high, but so much higher than I thought you would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably overstated there, but you know, I'll definitely pick like the 12 episode, 24 episode ones. I'll pick them first every time.
I kind of disagree, and this is why. If like in my phone, I keep a list of anime recommendations from people like Shane and Mike and my tattoo artist, whatever, and I write who recommended it next to it, because then that kind of helps me decide how much I trust their opinion. But
reasonable.
But I like to watch, like, Jujutsu Kaisen was a good example. Goblin Slayer, Demon Slayer, all these shows were one season. And even though there's more coming, if you don't like it, you didn't waste all this time watching 100 episodes. But if you really, really like it, I want to watch all of it. So I think, yeah, giving up on it easily is one thing, but I don't want to necessarily watch an entire series before I realize I hate it. If it's a season, I can give it 12 episodes, whatever. But the end in sight thing for me, I guess would make sense if I hated it. But I don't think a lot of people just go to Netflix and pick whatever anime pops up on the anime tab. They're probably going off of a recommendation from somebody who knows what they're talking about.
I get a lot of my recommendations from TikTok.
It's a great place for
I thought you were going to say bad recommendations from Shane. I'm like, no.
I mean, you know, there's a few from there that I've you know, like trusted opinions kind of thing. I think that's what like Cheese was saying, just about you'll kind of like I'll give like a long running anime a go if someone's like recommended
from the right person. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, that's my general view is if I've come across it myself and it's more than 2 seasons, I'm probably not going to watch it because I'm not going to dedicate myself to something that I know nothing about that's longer than 2 seasons. Whereas if it's come from, like you say, if it's come from a trusted source that's recommended it to me and I've got good reason to think I would enjoy it, then I'm more willing to give it a go. But I also give anime generally a 3/4 episode like grace period. So if it hasn't captured me by the 3rd episode, then I'm done with it.
Goblin Slayer is a good example of that because the first episode is trash, but the 2nd episode it finds its feet and it gets better.
And I generally find that the 1st episode of a lot of animes struggle to find their feet, and it's the 2nd and 3rd episodes where they really kind of secure themselves.
Especially if it's a pilot.
If they haven't caught me by the end of the 3rd episode, then I'm like, oh, this probably isn't gonna do it for me.
So
like for me, the opposite of that was Naruto again. Like the 1st episode was really good. Like had all these like nuanced storylines, like betrayal and you know this kid that wants to be the superhero figure in his village, and then the next episode it's like fucking what's it called, like the titty woman clone or whatever. Is like
I've never watched Naruto, so I don't know.
Yeah, it just goes from like really cool and like ninja village and pretty awesome to like really fucking stupid. And it's like it's just like it's a huge disconnect again. Like I was just like, I know, I'm done.
Shane, since you're like more experienced in anime and you're the one to give out recommendations, how do you discover new shows? Do you just kind of roll the dice and pick something that's trending, or do you have other sources too of people that watch a lot more than you, which seems impossible, but
I actually don't have any sources of people that watch more than me. Out of all my friends, I think I am the source generally. Couple of things I do. I do go through Funimation. I tend to anything that's new that comes out, I tend to give it a couple of episodes and just make a decision quite quickly off of that. So there's a lot of animes where I've only watched the first 2 or 3 episodes just to give it a try, because I want to test it out. I do also read a lot of. There's a website called the Anime News Network. So it's basically a worldwide news collaboration website. It collects all the anime news going on. I check that pretty much daily. They do reviews for all the upcoming seasons, so all the anime that's coming out. Massive nerd. And it's pretty much where I find out all of my anime news from. And then on top of that, because there's quite a bit around anime, I do know certain studios and that, like I keep track of what's going on. And for example, if Studio Trigger does something, that is automatically at the top of my list, no matter what, because I love the studio. Much like our friend Aidan, he's got directors that he loves, that if a film comes out by that director, he's likely to go and see it. It's exactly the same. If
Friend
it's
is a
being made by
strong
Trigger-
word in that sentence. Our friend Aiden. He's not going to listen to this anyway, so we can say that.
our compadre. Yeah. So if like say if something comes out from Studio Trigger, then I am that's top of my list.
Yeah.
But I also the thing is because I've spent such a long time with anime, I know what I like and I know what I don't like, and I can pick up generally within like I say 2 episodes whether I'm going to enjoy it. I know from just 1 or 2 shots of the anime style, like the art style, whether I'm going to like the art style or not, because I'm very picky when it comes to art styles.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate, and I mean hate, the really glossy CG style. So the first episode of season 2 of Love, Death and Robots, you know, the one with the old lady and the vacuum cleaner.
Yep. I've seen that one.
Yeah.
That's CG,
season 2.
That style of anime to me is horrible.
Mm.
I cannot get on with it. I prefer the hand drawn Demon Slayer, My Hero, Cowboy Bebop. I like the older style as well.
Yeah.
But that more sort of hand drawn style is much more me.
There's an episode in Love, Death and Robots where there's like an engineer that lives in like a feudal Japan type thing, and he basically transforms his scale into like a Nine-Tails fox, and that's very anime like animation style. I feel like you'd like that one over.
Yeah, definitely. But then I also don't like. So you've both watched Visions, haven't you? Star Wars Visions.
I watched the first episode, turned on the first episode, and there was something about that style that turned me off immediately. That first episode, I don't know if it's all the same. They're different, right?
No,
They're different styles.
Every single episode has a different anime style.
That first one was like very like the guy's cloak or something was blowing in the wind, and it was just going like this. And for some reason, I'm just like I can't do this, at least not right now in that current mindset. And anime is definitely, you have to be in the mood for a style. Sometimes it changes. Sometimes you need something very digestible like Haikyuu or something versus Demon Slayer where you have to pay more attention. But the style sometimes does ruin it for you. You're right.
Well,
it's that very sort of like ancient Japan like art style that you see on like feudal Japanese like scrolls and things like that. You imagine seeing.
Yeah, definitely. The episode, I think it was the second or third to last episode, which is the one with the robot Mike, that the little robot that could basically.
Yeah, it's like Astro Boy.
Yeah, so that proper like it was like 1950s, 1960s Astro Boy style animation. I do not like that. I think it's great from a historical perspective. Like I can see where it's come from. I can see why people like it. I just cannot get on with it. I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah. Just going back to sort of obviously this being a beginner's guide, I know Shane, you had a bunch of tips. I don't know if you've ran through them all already, or you want to go through them again just quickly, and then maybe we can move on to some recommendations from us all.
I mean, I've gone through like my core tips that it's more around the recommendations, whatever tips I've got left to kind of tie around that.
We could talk about the future of it and then give the recommendations to end. That might be a good process. So I think anime is more popular now than ever, especially in the United States. It's way more popular than it's ever been. And it goes beyond like Hot Topic. I don't know what stores you have, so if I'm talking gibberish, let me know. But Hot Topic and like the pop culture stores that the specific emo scene kids, whatever, would go in and out of and get their Dragon Ball Z t-shirts. Now it's like Target and Walmart have front end caps, full displays of manga books and of anime toys and even building kits like Gundam, like actual pieces together things. So it is so crazy. Another thing I was talking about with a coworker, even her daughter plays high school volleyball, and she said volleyball is the fastest growing sport in our state. And I've heard several people tell me this, that they know people whose kids started playing volleyball because of the Haikyuu anime. Like it's changing the way these kids are thinking because now it's more mainstream. And honestly, I chose to watch that anime one day because I wanted something simple. And when you tell somebody you're going to watch an anime about volleyball, boys volleyball in Japan, you're like, that's stupid. But I was like, well, it is super popular. So how did they do it? And why is it popular? And then you start to watch it and they break down volleyball and they break down like teamwork essentially, and it's maybe the most underrated sport I've ever heard of. Like, it is incredibly dense. Like, it's a very, very strategic, and I mean, it's a fun sport. I played it in 4th grade. It was awesome. But this is a whole show about it, and it's literally changing how these kids grow up, and that is amazing. So, for the people who are anime fans now, like you, Shane, or have been for years, it's probably pretty weird for you to see it as such a mainstream thing where adults and kids alike are sharing these interests and seeing these books and toys and figures and stuff pop up everywhere. And not only that, but it's become much more accessible. You don't have to have Crunchyroll and Funimation. You have Netflix has so much original content and a lot of old stuff. And they're even getting creative with like the live action Cowboy Bebop coming up. And then they just put the original series on there too. That's brilliant because everybody wants to watch that or rewatch it before they watch this new show that's coming out that's supposed to be awesome. When really it's a 25-year-old anime that's finally getting in front of people in a new way. So it's like Star Wars coming back again, where these animes that have stood the test of time are getting reintroduced to a new audience in a much more vast platform. Like, this is just the beginning, guys. Like, it's going to get way better from here. Even with like My Hero Academia, like the show's been on for a while, but it seems like Target and Walmart sell t-shirts now. Like, you can just get a shirt anywhere, and these figures that keep coming out everywhere, and it's so exciting.
Yeah, like I don't think the UK is quite at that level yet, but it's definitely sort of getting there.
Yeah,
like we don't have it's not Walmart over here, it's Asda, but like you may see like the odd little Pokemon thing or something like that, but as far as like things like Demon Slayer and My Hero and all of like the big popular ones at the minute are not really about. You may catch like Nike or
they're a little bit more about than they used to be, but yeah, I mean, Primark definitely has a few bits. I know Asda George has had a few bits over the last year or so, but yeah, they're not like as mainstream as I think they are with Hot Topic, for example, which is something we don't have over here, Cheese, just to let you know.
Yeah, but even our Target is like our second Walmart. It's huge in this country. It's everywhere. And for a while, you could get like a Dragon Ball Z t-shirt, but now it's Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and some of those older animes. And now I got a Demon Slayer shirt there the other day, and I have a My Hero shirt, and then there's some like a Hello Kitty My Hero shirt. Like, it's becoming so easy to get, and so it's just amazing. It's not just the nerdy kids anymore. It's kind of it's a pop culture thing, and nothing goes faster here than pop culture trends. Like, it's once it picks up steam, it sticks for years. It's like Go ahead.
I think it's definitely doing enough different stuff to become like more and more mainstream, like it is doing. One of the huge things I think that's obviously influencing that is like how social media is working.
Yeah.
Like currently, like you look on TikTok, it's probably the most popular app with like younger generation. You know, like for example, mine, every other thing on there is anime related in some way. Like there's no escape from it. And then you go on like places like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all custom adverts are all like anime related for like the latest shoes that have come out with like you know, like Demon Slayer artwork on the side and stuff like that. So it's just definitely like becoming more and more in your face and becoming this big enterprise, really. Yeah.
It's accessibility. That's the main thing. So I know you said obviously about it potentially me finding it weird, and I don't find it weird really. The difference now to when it first sort of started coming over is accessibility.
Yeah.
A lot of people would argue, and I think it's kind of it is kind of key that Akira, for example, when it came over in the mid-90s, is one of the first real anime films to breach the Western like audience. But the problem was if you weren't into anime hugely and you had to go out of your way to look for it, you weren't going to go and buy a kit. If you're going to go down to the DVD shop or video store, you weren't going to go and pick up an anime because you'd never heard of it and never seen it.
Yeah.
And then from there, the next next sort of really huge element was 2011, Spirited Away, completely took the world by storm. People started to pick up, well, actually, anime can be something different here. It can be lovable. And again, but it still didn't have that element of accessibility that it does now. And over the last 10 years, between Netflix, Amazon, both not only showing lots of previous animes that have been around, but also developing and funding their own animes, and then throwing in that we've now got streaming services like Funimation, Crunchyroll, them being on Hulu. I'm sure there's probably some on HBO Max. Because anime is so accessible now, that's what's causing this like massive uptake in it. And like Mike's a prime example. If it wasn't on Netflix, the chances are Mike would probably have not looked into it as much as he has. But the fact that he doesn't have to go out of his way to pay for it and go and buy an anime just to try it out means he's more willing to go and watch an anime just because it's there. It's there and it's free. It's part of a package you already have.
Yeah. But like you said, it is accessibility. But that's now led me on to Funimation, Crunchyroll, and those other big services like that, where I'm paying for those monthly now because I'm watching more and more anime. But it is like readily available, you know. The apps are right there on like PlayStation and Xbox and on your phone, all that.
On the Switch. Funimation's on the Switch now, which is like it's the first TV app to break the Switch.
Yeah. It's really bizarre. You'd think it'd be Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, like no other TV app gets onto the Switch, but Funimation does somehow. And it's actually a really good app. It's like really well developed, which is madness because Funimation apps are generally trash.
Yeah, they're pretty awful.
So
I mean, just before we step off of Funimation, obviously there was the big story earlier in the year. I don't know if you guys know this, but Crunchyroll was purchased by Sony. Sony owns Funimation. So Crunchyroll and Funimation are now owned by the same company. They have previously stated, or they haven't outlined how this is going to work, that the two companies will merge, and that there will be something along those lines, and that there will be a single subscription rate for all the content that both offer. Now, the interesting thing with that is, for those that don't know, Funimation specializes in dubbed. They're kind of the key, one of the probably the most influential dubbing company in America. They do kind of all the major dubs for major films. There are other dubbing companies, obviously, but they're the ones that kind of really stick out. Whereas Crunchyroll, outside of Japan, they are the go-to for next day episodes, live when Japan releases them. So My Hero comes out in Japan, you'll be able to watch it usually within a couple of hours in another country.
Or the next day, worst case. I think I usually get it the next day.
Exactly.
But
having those two combined is going to be incredible.
But that's subbed, and then if you don't want to wait, you can to get it dubbed, but otherwise you can watch it subtitled the next day.
Yeah, so it's only going to get better. It's only going to get bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, so should we tie up with some recommendations then?
Yeah, like I kind of split mine into sort of categories, maybe a little different to you guys, but my first sort of ones were superb stories. One of them being Attack on Titan, although it does have some down points and some weird choices and things like that. Overall, it's a great story. It's a fantastic setting about this sort of walled off city that's surrounded by these like attacking titans, titans that attack.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's just this like fantastic story, and it starts like instantly. It's like straight off the bat. It's and you're like straight into the story. You know, like these little villages in this tiny town are fucked, and it just carries on from there. It's great. It's a great ride. It's a great story.
And that one wraps up in the next year, right? It's its final season.
Yeah, I think it's something like between 60 and 80 episodes. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it said 80 because I looked it up earlier.
Shane's already doing the research on that, I can tell.
I think it was like
the anime glasses have come on.
86 or something.
Something like that. Yeah, it's quite long, but it's there's not much filler. I know that was one of the downsides of it. There's not too much filler in there. Another one, which is just a movie that I've watched recently and absolutely adored. This was off Shane's recommendation. Is Your Name?
Which is spoke about last week quite a bit.
Yeah, we covered it last week.
or last episode.
Or last episode there. Yeah, fantastic animation. Like if you want to know more about that, like listen to last week's episode or last episode. Another one which is a Netflix animation, is Seven Deadly Sins. It's again a little on the longer side, but has some fantastic like storylines and arcs and everything in it. It's got some great characters. I watched this entire series while I decorated my kitchen. Like I just watched all of the series while I was doing that, but it was a great time. Yeah. Another one is like your heroes, and another category for me is heroes and Saturday morning cartoon, that kind of vibe. So I'll just rattle through these quite quickly because there's a lot of them. I say there's a lot. There's 5. My Hero Academia being obviously top of the list. It is a Saturday morning cartoon. It's about superheroes. It's school kids. It takes you right back to that kind of era. Demon Slayer kind of, I know it's very horror-esque and it's a lot more adult, but it's like these like superhero characters with all these like crazy powers and abilities and things like that. That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, fantastic title, but it really has that vibe of this Saturday morning cartoon. Another great one is One Punch Man.
One Punch Man's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It really pokes fun at like all the tropes in anime, and it stars this overpowered bald character.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say
it. But yeah, so Cheese, you should watch it. You'd relate.
Yeah, because I look like him without muscles.
But yeah, so you just basically wins every fight in one punch, and it's just how boring that would get.
Spoiler alert, Jesus.
Another one which I watched recently again is Record of Ragnarok, which is this just crazy concept of like this. So it basically just pits different gods against each other. So you have it's gods versus humans. So you'll have great warriors from like Japanese history, people like Lu Bu and Guan Yu, people like that. There's also Adam of Adam and Eve, like the Christianity, like the very first human, and they're basically fighting like Thor and Odin and people like that. It's so crazy.
I need to watch that one.
So fun.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it is really good. But I've talked a lot, so I want to hear some of you guys' recommendation.
I'll go next because I'm sure Shane has a bunch. Obviously, you talked about Demon Slayer. We all obviously love Demon Slayer. My Hero Academia is the same. Haikyuu is the volleyball one. I don't know if I say that right, but that's how I say it. Haikyuu is a good one. It's very easy to watch. It's not a whole lot to pay attention to necessarily, but it's a good. It's just an interesting and very different. If you've never watched a sports anime, it might be a good place to start because it's pretty solid. I just watched The Way of the House Husband on Netflix. Super short. Episodes are maybe 12 minutes long, 15 maybe. I don't remember. And each episode is several vignettes of different things. So basically, quick synopsis, he was a Yakuza boss named Immortal Dragon, and now he's a house husband, so like a stay-at-home husband. And it's just like, it's amazing. He talks about beans, but they show that beans in the Yakuza are bullets, and so he's talking about beans with these other people, and they're like, beans, and it's so ridiculously funny and witty and well done. The animation style is awesome. Quick watch. Both of you would love it. Cowboy Bebop, like I said, makes me want to listen to jazz all day, every day. And that's basically my list. I would say listen to your friends that like anime because like Goblin Slayer is not something that's very popular, I don't think, or people would typically watch, especially after the first episode being as dog shit as it is. But your friends know what they're talking about. The anime nerds are anime nerds for a reason, and it's in their blood, and they will not lead you astray. So listen to your anime shepherds. They'll help you out.
So on the note of listening to your anime shepherds,
I'm going to edit this all out. Whatever you say.
here comes the anime shepherd. So I haven't put together a huge list because it is anime for beginners, as we said, and I don't want to overwhelm people with lots of recommendations. But I've got a small handful.
It already is overwhelming too as a beginner too, because everybody's like, watch this, move this to the top list. It's the best one all time, and then everybody else says it about 10 different animes. So
I'm going to follow sort of Mike's layout in that for me it's important that you pick the genre that's right for you. Yes. So I will lay them out in a couple of different genres, and then you can pick, because like you say, for one person, what is the best anime of all time isn't going to be the best anime of all time for someone else. So firstly, there's and I won't get into too much of the technical terms, but one that has come up recently is the isekai anime, which is being transported to another world. So Mike, you mentioned the time I got reincarnated as a slime. Fantastic anime. And that is very much that. A guy in like the first couple of seconds, he dies in his world and therefore gets reincarnated in a fantasy world. So he's from the standard human world that we live in, and he gets teleported into another one. That's kind of the view of isekai. The one I would say for that, most people won't say it's the best. It's not the best. It's up there though. It's in the top 5, and that is Sword Art Online. The reason I would say to a beginner to watch this is because it is very, very approachable from an outside perspective of anime. It's one that it explains itself really well. You can get a feel for the anime really well, and you can get a feel for what's going on really well. It's not overcomplicated. It doesn't take itself too super seriously, but it does have some quite serious and dark story overall. But it's quite an easy one to get yourself into without going sort of like into the real deep end of isekais. And I could tell you about a lot of them because I've watched a lot of the isekai like genre. Mecha, which is one of my personal favorite genres, which, as I said earlier, it's generally giant robots fighting other giant robots with people in them. There's 2 that stand out for me. So one is called Lelouch of the Rebellion, or it's Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. And essentially it features a guy who can, he basically develops a power where he can make anybody do what he wants them to do. Like he can tell them what to do, and they have to do it. But it's got mechas in it as well, and he kind of leads this giant, as you can tell from the title, rebellion. Fantastic, really, really well done, great battle scenes. But my top mecha, which I 100% tell everybody to watch whenever I get an opportunity, and that is called Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann, or just Gurren Lagann for America and the UK, because we tend to not mention the Tengen Toppa part. This was by Studio Gainax, which is what later became Studio Trigger, or a lot of the people in it anyway became part of Studio Trigger. And it is a fantastic anime. It's all self-contained within 24 episodes, 2 cores like most series, and essentially it is about humans fighting for their right to live on the planet. They all live underground and they're fighting their oppressors, and it has got some of the best robot fight scenes I think you'll ever see. And not only that, but it's all about fighting with manly spirit, but it kind of takes the piss out of itself a little bit for that. And it's so well done. Fantastic.
I thought you were going to say robot sex scenes.
No, there's no robot sex scenes, but there is. So you know how in there is a really comical scene where, you know how in shows like Power Rangers and like Voltron and things like that, they like kind of just morph. Do that and they just connect.
Yeah,
they just connect, but no one really knows how they connect. And there is quite a comical scene where one of the characters is like, yeah, we need to team up, we need to connect, and he just picks up another robot and just shoves it on top of himself and goes, that'll do. And like it kind of takes the piss out of that a little bit, but then it is so well done, and it's really, really cool once you get into it. So I would strongly, and again, it's on Netflix, so I would strongly recommend anybody to watch that. Coming away from the sort of combat-y ones, sport, there's I've got one that's a little bit more normal and one that's a little bit out there for the sports genre. So sticking with the volleyball, but I didn't really get on with Harajuku quite as much as I wanted to. I did enjoy though a very short anime called Harajuku. I think it's Harajuku. I can't remember how to say her name. Hakajuka receives. It's basically about a girl who discovers beach volleyball and goes into competition beach volleyball. But I really enjoyed it. It's just a really like laid back, chilled anime about beach volleyball. But the more interesting sports anime for me, and I say sport loosely because it's not actually a sport
I know what you're
in
gonna
what
say.
we would class a sport.
I know what you're gonna say for this one.
Do you?
Is it Kaijo?
Kaijo.
No, but Kaijo should be on my list. I'm going to add Kaijo to
That's
the
what I
list
thought he was
now.
going to say too.
So everybody should watch Kaijo. It's 12 episodes, and it is about women who fight each other on floating platforms with their bums and boobs. And it is fantastic, and you should all watch it. But that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is Girls and Panzer. So Girls and Panzer it's set in a world where schools have tanks, and they're on like aircraft carriers. But the schools meet up to do mock battles with tanks, and they don't use like real explosives or anything, but they battle each other, and a group of girls create the tanking club in their school, and then they basically live out, they complete these battles. But it's the love of tanks in that show is fantastic. Like they're talking about World War II tanks with so much joy and love, and it's actually so well done. It's had one series and like 3 films. Very, very good, and I would 100% advise anybody to watch it.
I feel like we could do another episode of this, but about ridiculous animes. Like we each watch a ridiculous anime. Like nobody mentioned Prison School or any of those that we've talked about before.
I'm trying to stick clear of the weird ones because this is anime for beginners,
right?
Not
so we should do it
for the more advanced.
That's what we should get to at some point. It's like the weird one-off. Like, why did we watch this type anime? Just because it'd be a fun conversation.
Yeah,
100%. So I've got 3 more, and then 4 more, then I'm done.
Shane, just while you were just still on sports, there, I want to throw Megalobox in the ring.
Yeah.
So it's a boxing anime, but the sort of the twist of it is that everyone that sort of wears these like robotic arms that they box with, and then they have the underdog character who fights without them, basically.
What?
It's a great like underdog story, your classic sort of boxing story where like you have this average Joe. I think that's literally his name in it.
Okay,
it's Rocky the anime.
You've mentioned
essentially, but with robot arms.
You've mentioned that anime so many times and told us to watch it, but I've never heard it summarized like that. Now I'm like, I'd watch that. So really, that is a huge part of anime, though, is just having the right person explain it to you, sell it to you.
100%.
Like that sounds
100%.
amazing.
Yeah, it is really good. There's 2 seasons, and they're both fantastic as well. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, you're fine. Yeah, you're fine. So my last 4. So firstly, I'm not sure exactly which genre I put these in, but they're sort of slice of life meets music. One of them with a twist. So the first one is a show called K-On!, which is basically about some girls in school who want to start their own band. And it's just a story of them starting their own band and like them going through the day-to-day trials and tribulations of starting their own band. It's very like, it's not super fantastic or anything like that. It's very laid back, very down to earth, and just chill. It's just chill. And the opposite end of that spectrum, though, is an anime called Zombieland Saga, which, and this is going to be a fun explanation, which is about a guy who brings back 5 idols who have died prematurely in their youth from the dead to turn them into a zombie singing group, but they're not allowed. No one else knows they're zombies because he puts makeup on them, but they can all sing and dance and talk like normal, but they're also zombies.
That's awesome.
So that's a real fun one. And then lastly, we have horror. Oh, I say lastly, the last 2 for the horror genre. Not a lot of people have watched this one, but I thought it was really good. An anime called Gleipnir, which is spelt Gleipnir.
We should have spelled most of yours because I was trying to sound them out. And I'm like, Champloo? Is that a S? Is it a... And your accent doesn't help. I'm like, shampoo, samurai shampoo.
That's right. Just type it in how it sounds, and I'm sure Google will do the rest.
I hope so.
It will. So Gleipnir is without giving away any spoilers, it's almost like a horror monster fighting sort of anime, but it's the main guy transforms kind of into a giant cuddly bear that's really horrific looking.
I think I've seen like clips of this on TikTok.
Without saying much more, I don't
Yeah.
want to spoil anything, but you should give it a try. And there's like, you will understand why I can't say much more without spoiling anything, but it's really quite interesting to watch. Very different.
Yeah.
And then my last, and this is my last absolute recommendation that I think everybody should have a go at. It is actually one that My Hero Academia takes a lot of what happens in My Hero is very similar to this show. This show is called Little Witch Academia, and basically it's much like My Hero. It's about a young girl who doesn't have any magical powers, who wants to join a witching school so that she can help people with her magic. And it's the story of her going from being a non-magic user to going on to be like not like the best. She has that sort of Midoriya travel where she kind of just does her best throughout, and she gets involved in things and pulls off some incredible stuff.
Nice.
But the animation on it is fantastic. Again, I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix.
Somebody told me that this, like a huge anime nerd guy that I know, I used to work with, he told me it was based off The Worst Witch, which is like a British TV show, like children's TV show.
I don't know if it was, but it could be because it was.
I don't know. That's just what I heard anyway. But,
I mean, it was made after
always,
The
like,
Worst
stuck in my
Witch,
mind.
so it's a very real. It is very much though The Worst Witch, but in anime form.
Yeah.
But it is, it's fantastic. So I would highly recommend it. But that is me done, and our episode is overrun, so we should probably look at tying it up.
Yeah. So just quickly, one recommendation, one anime to an absolute beginner. Which one would you pick?
Oh man,
Cheese, you go first. You tell them that it's my Hero Academia, and then we can move on to Shane.
I don't think I would say My Hero because that's an investment of time. I mean, if you're into the superhero, it really would be personalized though. I'd have to know the person and be like, oh, well, you would like this. So like my twin brothers.
Please just pick one.
It's
not that difficult.
It is that difficult.
Just pick one.
Demon Slayer.
Perfect. Little Witch Academia.
Okay, I'm going to go for Love, Death and Robots just because I said it is a broad spectrum of animation styles.
Bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. That was the episode. I did have some honorable mentions that I wanted to just throw in there. What If, the Marvel thing, Star Wars Visions as well is another great animation, and the Oren Ishii bit in Kill Bill is like incredible.
The fact that Marvel and Star Wars both went to an anime style show is huge, hugely telling of the times too. That the trend is just going up.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was our beginner's guide to anime. So yeah,
part 1 of 10.
Episode 1 of 1,000. But yeah, catch us next time, and that's us. That's been us. So peace. Bye.
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 Triple XP.